They told us space will be silent, peaceful, but they lied. There's a sound out here, a hum, deep and low, like the universe whispering through clenched teeth. It gets inside your bones. You don't notice it at first. Then one day you wake up and it's there, under your skin, behind your eyes, rattling inside your skull like a dying light bulb. That's when it starts. This is Peter Halvorsen, lead systems engineer, mission specialist aboard the Caduceus. If you're hearing this, I need you to listen carefully. Do not come looking for us. We are beyond Neptune now. No one talks about what lies out here. They speak of planets, of exploration, of stars and endless dark. But no one warns you about what watches from the quiet places. No one warns you about the obelisk. Our mission was labeled Scientific Recon, Deep Space Artifact 01. Sounds impressive, right? Truth is, we weren't told anything at first. Just coordinates and orders. The crew, 12 of us, were handpicked, cleared through layers of security deeper than anything I've ever seen. Not even the pilot knew where we were really going until we passed Saturn. They called it Obelisk Red, a structure detected on the edge of the Kuiper Belt. It wasn't built by humans. That much was obvious from the first image. It had no right angles, no seams, just a black surface that swallowed light like a hole in the world. It looked small in the pictures. They always do. I remember the first time we saw it with our own eyes. Even through the observation deck's reinforced glass, it made my stomach turn. The way it just hung there, motionless, ancient, wrong, like it was waiting, or listening. Dr. Fabio Leclerc was the only one who didn't seem disturbed. He just stared at it, smiling like he knew a secret the rest of us were too stupid to understand. "You feel it, don't you?" he said to me, eyes never leaving the obelisk. "It's already begun." I didn't answer him. I thought maybe he was just playing up the whole mystic genius routine. But now I'm not so sure. Things changed after that. Slowly at first. Power flickers, strange readings, voices over the comms that no one admitted to sending. I checked the systems. Over and over. They were clean. No glitches. No faults. Just noise. The kind that makes your ears ring when everything's supposed to be quiet. People started having dreams. Some couldn't sleep at all. I caught one of the techs scratching symbols into the walls with a fork, murmuring about a door opening. Another tried to reroute life support through the communications array. When I asked why, he said, they said it would help them speak. He didn't say who they were. I tried to stay logical. I really did. But even I started seeing things. My brother, Mark, he went missing 5 years ago on a classified mission. We were told it was a malfunction during re-entry. Body unrecovered. I mourned him. Moved on. But now out here, I see him. Reflected in screens, in my cabin window, sometimes standing behind me when I'm alone. Smiling. This mission, it's not about research. It's not about science. This is a trap. A test. A signal. And we're the antenna. So here I am, recording this log in secret, tucked away in a maintenance shaft while the others either sleep or spiral deeper into whatever madness the obelisk is feeding us. If this log ever makes it back to Earth, don't send help. Don't investigate. Don't analyze. Just erase everything. Burn the files. Destroy the data. Some things out here aren't meant to be found. End log. They told us it was a satellite deployment mission. That was the first lie. From the moment I stepped aboard the Caduceus, I knew this wasn't some routine operation. You don't assign a cybernetics engineer with deep space clearance to launch a weather relay. You don't build a ship this massive, this sealed off, for a job that a drone could do. And you definitely don't bury a crew under this much silence unless you're hiding something. The Caduceus wasn't a ship. It was a vault. I stood alone in the observation deck as we passed the dark edge of Neptune's rings. There's a kind of quiet out here that hums in your bones. The stars seem farther apart, colder. It's like space knows when you've crossed into places humans weren't meant to go. Our ship ran smooth. Too smooth, almost. Every surface gleamed with that sterile white you only see in high-security labs. No chatter in the halls. No off-duty laughter. Just the low whir of oxygen recyclers and the occasional hiss of pressure adjusting between corridors. There were 7 of us. Small crew. Tight-lipped. I knew none of them before this launch. That wasn't normal either. Usually, you run joint simulations for months before a trip like this. But this time, we were pulled from separate divisions, flown to different launch points, and met for the first time on board. Every face I passed held the same look, curiosity mixed with unease. We all knew the mission brief didn't add up, but we were professionals. You don't ask too many questions when your paycheck has a black bar stamp across it. Our captain, or mission commander, officially, was Dr. Fabio Leclerc. He didn't look like a military man or a pilot, more like a university lecturer who had wandered into the wrong building and just kept going. He had this calm, polished voice, like he was always narrating a documentary. He rarely smiled, but when he did, it felt like he already knew something you didn't. He gathered us in the central atrium after launch. A bare room. No windows. No distractions. "Welcome aboard the Caduceus," he said, hands clasped behind his back. "This ship is a marvel of silent engineering. It's a vessel of precision, of purpose. I expect nothing less from each of you." No one asked questions. We all just nodded. That was our first and only full crew meeting. After that, we were left to our assigned stations. I had access to the system's deck, third level below the observation ring. It was a good spot, quiet, away from the rest. There, I could dig into the ship's logs, poke at the transmission history. It didn't take long to find the redacted entries. The Caduceus had launched before, at least 2 other missions, both scrubbed from official records. The logs were incomplete, names blacked out, coordinates missing, but enough remained to paint a picture. They had gone out toward the same sector we were headed for now, beyond Pluto, toward something called obelisk red. I didn't tell the others. Not yet. Trust hadn't formed between us, and the last thing I wanted was to trigger paranoia before we even hit orbit. But that name, it stuck with me. Obelisk red. It didn't sound like a location. It sounded like a warning. On the 4th day, I started hearing it. A hum. Barely there. Like a low note held just beneath hearing. You could almost convince yourself it wasn't real, just your ears adjusting to cabin pressure or the usual audio feedback. But it wasn't in my ears. It was in the walls. I tried isolating the sound through the comm system. Nothing. I ran a systems diagnostic. No errors. When I asked another crew member, a young comms tech named Kira, if she heard it too, she paused before answering. "I don't know," she said. "Sometimes it feels like the ship is breathing." She meant it as a joke, but her voice cracked slightly on the word breathing. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a vault. It was a coffin, already closed, and we were drifting into something waiting to be opened. I met Dr. Fabio Leclerc for the first time in the observation deck, 2 days into the mission. He was already there when I walked in, standing completely still in front of the glass, staring out at the black sea of stars like he was waiting for something to appear. He didn't turn when I entered, just raised a hand and tapped the glass lightly, once, twice, like he was knocking on the door of the universe. There was something strange about him, even then. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said without turning. His voice was soft but crisp, like it had been polished for public speeches. The silence, the emptiness. People are terrified of it, but I think it's the only honest thing left. I didn't respond at first. I just stood next to him and followed his gaze. We were passing near the edge of Saturn's orbit, the golden rings barely visible now as a thin curve in the distance. The stars beyond that stretched forever, quiet and cold. Space has a way of making you feel small. But next to Fabio, I didn't feel small. I felt watched. He finally turned to me, and his eyes locked on mine. Light brown, almost amber, with a steadiness that made it hard to look away. I'd read his file before we launched. Experimental biopsychologist, formerly affiliated with the Geneva Neurobehavioral Institute. Emphasis on formerly. Most of his records were redacted. That wasn't unusual on classified missions, but with Fabio, it felt intentional. "You're Peter Halvorsen," he said, like he was confirming something rather than asking. "Systems engineering. Cybernetics background. Lost someone on the previous deep space mission, didn't you?" I stiffened. "My brother." He nodded solemnly. "I'm sorry." There was a pause. Not the awkward kind. Fabio didn't do awkward. It was more like he was giving the silence space to breathe. "I reviewed the logs from that mission," he added, voice dropping lower. "What happened to them? It wasn't just system failure. You know that, don't you?" I didn't answer. My jaw clenched on instinct. Fabio turned back to the stars. "People think deep space drives us mad. Isolation, sensory deprivation, cabin fever. But madness isn't always a crack. Sometimes it's an opening." "What does that mean?" I asked. He smiled. Not friendly. Not unkind either. Just calm. Like he knew a secret and was waiting for me to figure out on my own. You'll understand soon, he said. The obelisk has a way of showing things to those who are ready. That was the first time he mentioned it directly. The obelisk. At that point, the crew still called it by the project name, Object RZ3. But Fabio refused to use numbers. To him, it wasn't a thing. It was a presence. Later that day, I noticed something else. Every time Fabio entered a room, the atmosphere changed. People straightened up. Conversations paused. Even the captain, a seasoned veteran from Mars Titan runs, gave him room. Not out of fear exactly. It was deeper than that. Like the air got thinner around him. I watched him during meals. He barely ate. Mostly just sat, quietly observing. When he spoke, it was always in riddles or quotes from philosophers I'd never heard of. Once, he asked the pilot if she believed the stars were watching us. When she laughed, he didn't. At night, he wandered. I caught him once in the server core, standing motionless in front of one of the quantum relay nodes. When I asked him what he was doing, he said, listening. The ship is already hearing things. We're just not tuned in yet. After that, I started keeping closer tabs on him. Not officially, just watching. The way he talked to the younger crew members. The way they started repeating his phrases. The way his presence bled into the air, into the static of the comms, into the dreams I couldn't quite remember when I woke up. He wasn't just a scientist. He was something else. A believer. And belief is dangerous out here, where there's no gravity to pull your mind back to Earth. That night, I wrote a private log entry. I wasn't supposed to keep private logs. Every recording on the Caduceus was monitored, scrubbed, and stored. But I buried this one deep in the backup directory. Dr. Fabio Leclerc is not what he seems. I don't think he's here to study the obelisk. I think he came to worship it. I didn't say it out loud, but I was already wondering, what if it was listening? There's a moment in deep space where silence becomes a sound of its own. It settles in your bones, presses against your skin like a second atmosphere. You start to hear things, not with your ears, but with your nerves. It's like the ship is whispering, just low enough that you can never quite make out the words. It started with the lights in Corridor C. They flickered once, maybe twice, during our rotation cycle. I was in the systems bay, running diagnostics on our environmental controls when Leanne, our comms officer, buzzed in through my headset. Peter, are you doing maintenance in C? She asked. Her voice had a slight edge to it, tension she was trying to mask. No, I replied, already pulling up the hallway's power grid on my terminal. What? The lights just went dark for 5 seconds. Not a flicker, completely dead. Then they came back on. That wasn't possible. Corridor C was part of the primary power circuit, triple redundant. Even if one system failed, the backups would compensate instantly. A blackout meant something deeper. Something wrong. I ran a full diagnostic. No errors. No spikes. No logs of any disruption. When I told Leanne, she went quiet for a few seconds, then muttered, maybe I imagined it. But she didn't. And I knew it. Later that cycle, the ship began playing tricks on us. A recorded message played over the intercom, an old one. A mission briefing from a past voyage, years before Caduceus was even built. The voice was male, garbled, speaking in broken Russian. Most of the crew didn't recognize it. I did. It was my brother's voice. I froze when I heard it. Not just because he was supposed to be dead. Not just because the system had no reason to access that file. But because he said my name. Peter, you're already here. Static swallowed the rest. I tore through the internal archives, searching for the source of the file. It wasn't there. It hadn't been uploaded. There was no trace of the audio ever existing. I didn't tell the others. Not yet. Maybe I wasn't ready to admit how deep this rabbit hole went. Or maybe some part of me hoped it was a hallucination. Stress. Sleep deprivation. Anything but what it might really mean. Things only got worse from there. We started hearing things on the open comms channel. Soft breathing, metallic tapping, a scraping like nails against aluminum. Always faint. Always just on the edge of clarity. At one point, Mendez, our pilot, stormed into the mess hall looking pale and furious. Who was in my quarters? He demanded. No one answered. We were all there, eating or talking or staring at nothing. Don't screw with me. Someone was standing over my bunk. I saw a shadow under the door, and when I opened it, no one. But my locker was open, and my boots were wet. No one said a word. Even Fabio didn't speak. A cold silence spread through the room. It was around then I started noticing the rhythm and the hum of the engines, the way the ship creaked during gravity shifts, the blink pattern of the emergency lights during routine diagnostics. There was a rhythm to it, a pulse, like a heartbeat, like something inside the ship was breathing. I brought it up to Fabio during our scheduled psych eval. He just smiled. "Do you know the first thing primitive cultures did when they heard thunder, Peter?" he asked me. "They gave a name. They gave it meaning. You're doing the same, assigning intent to a pattern you can't explain." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But later that night, as I lay in my bunk, I heard my name again. Not over the comms. Not in a dream. Right behind me. A whisper. "Peter, it's not the ship." I spun around. No one was there. But the air was cold, and my boots were wet. I didn't sleep that cycle, and I haven't since. They say space is silent, cold, vast, but nothing prepared me for the soundless scream that was the obelisk. We saw just past Pluto when the last of Neptune's pale blue glow disappeared behind us. The Caduceus had entered a sector we weren't supposed to be in, somewhere uncharted, blacker than black, where even the stars seemed afraid to shine. I was at the viewport in the upper observatory when the ship's trajectory curve adjusted, and I saw it. Not through scanners. Not on radar. No, I saw it with my own eyes. The obelisk. It didn't shimmer or reflect light. It swallowed it, like it didn't belong in this universe at all. One moment there was nothing, and then it was there, like it had always been there. A black shape suspended in space, shaped like a jagged monolith, tilted at an unnatural angle. It floated just beyond a skeletal asteroid ring, still and impossible. A voice crackled through the comms. Visual confirmation of Object Alpha. Prepare for analysis sweep. That was Fabio. Calm, collected, as if he were spotting a new mineral sample, not something that looked like it had been built by a god, or something worse. I didn't say anything. I was too busy staring. The obelisk was huge. I don't even know how to describe its size. It didn't fit into any human sense of proportion. It looked far away, but felt close, like it was inside the ship already, pressing against the walls of my mind. And that's when the noise started. Not through the ship systems. Not in the hull. Inside my head. A low humming. Barely there. Like someone was running a tuning fork inside my skull. It wasn't painful. Not yet. Just uncomfortable. Like a warning. Like a presence reaching out and gently tapping on the glass between us. "Peter," Fabio's voice came again, softer this time, as if he were standing right behind me, even though I knew he was down in Central Ops. "Do you feel it?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to admit it. "Good," he said anyway. "That means it's aware of you." The ship's lights dimmed, then flickered back to normal. A glitch, maybe. Or maybe not. The navigation panel to my left pinged. Frequency match detected. Source, unknown. The text repeated once, then vanished. I logged it, of course. That's what I'm supposed to do. Monitor, record, report. But even as I typed it into my terminal, I felt stupid. What was I going to say? We approached a giant alien artifact, and it said hello. No one back on Earth would believe it. Hell, I barely believed it myself. The rest of the crew began arriving at the observatory in shifts. Kyoko, our pilot, stared wide-eyed at the thing and whispered, "It's like it's breathing." Harper, the comms officer, said she didn't see anything at all, just static. She blinked and squinted, swore it wasn't there. I envied her. Fabio, of course, came last. He stood right next to me, hands folded behind his back, eyes locked on the obelisk. He looked like a man staring at a painting he'd been waiting his whole life to see. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he murmured. "It's not a structure. It's a message." I turned toward him. "What kind of message?" He didn't answer, just smiled. Later that cycle, I tried to sleep. I couldn't. The hum wouldn't stop. It was inside me now, like a second heartbeat, a dull throb pulsing behind my eyes. I started to wonder if I had brought it back with me from the observatory, or if it had followed me. Red emergency lights blinked once down the hallway outside my quarters. A false trigger, supposedly. Engineering said it was a power surge. But I swear I saw something move. Just for a second. A shadow on the wall. Something tall. Thin. Watching. And then it was gone. I closed my door. And I didn't open it for the rest of the night. They say space is silent. That's a lie. There's a sound out here, past Neptune. It's not a noise you hear with your ears. It's a pressure, a thrum, like your skull is a tuning fork, and something is striking it again and again, just out of rhythm with your thoughts. The obelisk had been in view for 2 days now. It hadn't moved. It hadn't spoken, but it was there, and something had changed in all of us. I woke this morning in my bunk to find a thin layer of frost on the inside of the hull. That shouldn't happen. Our internal climate control is airtight, steady to the decimal. I waved it away with a gloved hand, but it left a strange print. Not mine. Longer fingers. Almost insect-like. I didn't mention it to the others. Later, in the mess hall, Jenkins stared at his meal packet like it was breathing. His hands trembled, spoon midair. He hadn't eaten in 12 hours. When I asked if he was okay, he just mumbled something about the engines being too loud. I reminded him the engines weren't running. He blinked, then said, "Oh, right." Then he got up and left his tray behind. There's a hallway on Deck C that connects the observation dome to the reactor maintenance hub. I walk it every day during system checks. I know every inch of it. Every loose panel. Every light that flickers when we pass into the planet's shadow. But today it felt longer. Like the corridor had stretched while I wasn't looking. I walked its length 3 times. Counted the ceiling vents twice. The numbers didn't match. At the end of the hall, I stopped. I could feel it then. The pulsing vibration coming through the walls. Not strong. Subtle. But steady, like a second heartbeat. I pressed my ear to the metal. That's when I heard the voices. They didn't speak any language I recognized. Not English. Not Russian. Not Mandarin. Just whispers. Circular. Overlapping. Like radio static trying to form words. Not loud. But they were inside the wall. Deep. I stood there, listening, breath held, trying to find a pattern. Then one word slipped through. Just one. Peter. I flinched back, heart pounding. The hall was empty. The lights overhead buzzed like normal. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything felt wrong. I told myself it was stress. Maybe even a micro-seizure. We've been out here too long. Cabin fever was inevitable. But that didn't explain what I found later in Lab B. We keep the lab sealed unless we're running biologicals or isolating hazardous materials. Today it was unlocked. The lights were off, but the emergency system cast a soft red glow across the floor. Something had been written on the far wall. Not with ink. Not with a marker. Scratched in. Deep. There in the silence. I took a step closer and realized the scratches weren't shallow. The words had been carved through the wall panel, down to the inner plating. There's no tool on this ship that could have done it quietly. I would have heard the noise, even in my sleep. The others would have, too. I reviewed the security footage. The file was missing. Just gone. Not corrupted. Not scrambled. Deleted. Clean. I asked Fabio about it. He was in his quarters, meditating, sitting cross-legged in a circle of data chips, humming to himself. He opened one eye when I spoke. "The silence is where they live," he said softly. "You're lucky you've heard them. It means they've started to trust you." I asked him who they were. He smiled, like I'd asked a child's question. "The ones waiting. The ones that were always here. The obelisk is just a door." I left before I said something I'd regret. But I couldn't stop thinking about his words. That night, as I lay in my bunk, I heard it again. The pressure. The thrum. Faint and getting closer. And beneath it, the whispering returned. My name, this time clearer. Urgent. "Peter, help us." I pulled the blanket over my head like a child, heart pounding. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in signals. Patterns. Frequencies. And something out here is broadcasting straight into our minds. We've only begun listening, but it's been listening to us for a very long time. I've seen things no one should see, things that should never be allowed to touch the human mind. But here I am, logging the events that led to the first sacrifice. I guess it's too late to pretend it didn't happen. Too late to say I didn't know what was coming. I should have listened sooner. It started with Kaya. She was one of the younger ones, a sharp-eyed comms officer with a quick smile and even quicker reflexes. Always first to crack a joke when things got too tense. Her laughter used to fill the quiet corners of the ship, making the miles between us and Earth feel just a little smaller, just a little less like a tomb. Now, I can't even remember what her laugh sounded like. Maybe it's because it was never real. She collapsed while monitoring the signals. That's what they said. We were all in the briefing room, staring at the holographic readouts of the obelisk, trying to get a better understanding of the electromagnetic pulse it was emitting. I was watching the patterns on the screen when I heard her breathing change. It wasn't normal. Sharp, ragged gasps. Then, the silence. I turned around just in time to see her seize up. Her back arched so violently I thought she might snap in half. Her hands, clenched tight, left deep indentations in the arms of her chair. Her eyes were wide open, but there was nothing behind them. Blank, like a doll's eyes. And her mouth opened in a scream that never came. Instead, a low hum, almost like a song, poured out of her, barely audible but still shaking the air. I tried to reach her, but before I could even move, her body fell limp. The scream in my head never left. I remember the faces of the others, frozen, confused. Fabio was the first to step forward. He didn't look surprised, not even a hint of shock. It was like he had been expecting it. I guess I should have expected it too. It had been building up for days. Kaya was always the first to mention the strange humming sounds coming from the walls, how the air seemed thinner, colder, whenever we got closer to the obelisk. None of us had been willing to listen. I thought it was all in our heads. We've been away from Earth for too long. Space messes with your mind, makes you hear things that aren't there. Fabio kneeled beside Kaya, his fingers brushing her forehead. His eyes, always calculating, narrowed just slightly. He whispered something I couldn't hear, and for a moment, I wondered if he was praying. But that wasn't what he was doing. No, Fabio doesn't pray. He worships. He's been worshiping the obelisk for months now, in secret. I'm certain of it. He mutters about ascension, about opening the mind to what lies beyond, to the architects. I didn't want to believe him. I still don't want to, but I'm starting to wonder if he was right about one thing. The obelisk is calling. He stood up, wiping his hands on his suit, as if nothing had happened. As if we hadn't just watched one of our own slip into whatever that was. She'll be fine, Fabio said, though his words didn't match his eyes. Just a little overwhelmed. It's all part of the process. The process. I remember the coldness in his voice. The others just nodded, like they were used to this. But I wasn't. No one could be used to this. I've been on space missions before, but nothing prepared me for this. They took Kaya to the medical bay, but I don't think she'll ever wake up. Not the same, anyway. I saw her after, her body lifeless, cold, but her eyes, they were wide open, staring at nothing. It was like she was already seeing something beyond us. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending it's just a malfunction, that it's all in our heads. There's something out there, something in the obelisk. I want to check the data feed. Any change in the pulse, any spike. The screen was glitching, lines of code dancing on the monitor. I tried to clear it, but the words just wouldn't make sense. It's like the system itself is trying to hide something from me. I thought I heard Kaya's voice again in the static. I don't know if it was just a trick of the mind, but it sounded too real, too human. A cry for help, but no one else heard it. I should have said something. I should have stopped the mission right then, but I didn't. I watched as the others went on like nothing had happened. Like Kaya wasn't slipping away. Fabio was smiling that same, unsettling smile. He seemed pleased. No one else questioned it. They were too afraid of the mission's goal. Too afraid of what would happen if they refused to follow. I can't keep pretending I don't know what's happening. Kaya was the first, but she won't be the last. I'm sure of that. And the obelisk? It's just getting started. It started with the silence. The kind that fills your ears, presses against your skin, and makes you question whether it's always been there, just waiting for you to notice. There was nothing overt, nothing I could pinpoint at first, but something had shifted. The hum of the caduceus, the faint, comforting pulse of the life support systems, the gentle grind of the engines, had become strange. Not wrong, just off, like a clock that's a few seconds behind, ticking in the background, never quite in sync. Fabio had always been different, even before we left Earth's orbit. But now, he was becoming something else entirely. I noticed it the night after the first incident. The crew was restless, not just from the strain of deep space, but from something else, something more insidious. I had overheard Dr. Leclerc talking to someone in the hall, but when I walked closer, he stopped talking. His voice had that strange, deliberate calmness to it, the kind that only comes from a man who knows something you don't. He spoke in riddles, like he was trying to draw out a truth we weren't ready for. Sometimes, Peter, to truly understand, we must surrender ourselves, he had said, almost like a prayer, his voice too soft for normal conversation. The obelisk isn't a structure. It's an invitation. It's a step forward. I shook my head, walking past the door without making eye contact. But something about his words lingered. The next day, Fabio gathered the crew in the observation deck. It wasn't mandatory, at least not officially. But I could see the pull, the magnetic force in his words that coaxed everyone into the room. When I stepped in, he was already standing by the window, staring at the obelisk. Its shape loomed in the distance, like a black monolith, still too far to make out fine details, but close enough to fill us with a sense of wrongness. I could see it on the others' faces, the way they watched it, the way their eyes glazed over. It was subtle, but it was there, a faint shift in their expression, as if the obelisk were pulling on their very souls. You feel it too, don't you? Fabio said, his voice low, almost reverent. The pull. The call. I didn't respond, but I could hear others nodding. I didn't understand it then, but now, looking back, I wonder if I had already been infected by it too. We are standing on the edge of something monumental, Fabio continued, turning to face us. His eyes gleamed with that manic edge I'd come to know too well. This is no mere exploration. This is an invitation to transcend, to become something more. And we, he gestured to the group, are the chosen few, the ones who will understand. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but my stomach twisted into knots. It wasn't just his words. It was the way the crew reacted. Their faces were blank, serene, almost as if they were hypnotized. A few of them had smiles stretched unnaturally across their lips, their eyes too bright. I recognized some of them as the same people who had been rattled by strange dreams and distant voices, but they were nodding, agreeing with him now, as if they hadn't noticed their own transformation. Fabio started the sessions after that. Private meetings, he called them. He insisted that we had to open ourselves up, that we had to align with the signal to fully understand what we were dealing with. He was always the first to volunteer for these sessions. Of course, his obsession growing with each passing day. There was a reverence in his voice, a kind of feverish excitement that made my skin crawl. I wasn't the only one who was uncomfortable. There were others, too. People who whispered to me in the corners of the ship. People who asked me to keep an eye on things. There was a man, Jackson, the comms officer, who had been acting strange ever since the first night of those whispers. I could see his hand shaking whenever he came near the control room, but when I asked him if everything was all right, he just nodded and smiled, too wide, too forced. Nothing to worry about, Peter, he had said once. We're just changing. I didn't know what that meant, but I didn't want to find out. Still, curiosity gnawed at me. What exactly was Fabio doing to them? What was he telling them? I had to know. I decided to attend one of the sessions, though I knew it was dangerous. If I were caught, I could be marked as a dissenter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, and I needed to see it for myself. That night, I slipped into the observation room. The lights were dimmed, the air heavy with an almost electric charge. Fabio sat in the center of the room, his eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. Around him, the crew sat in a circle, their heads tilted back, eyes closed. They looked peaceful, too peaceful, like they were in a trance. Fabio's voice cut through the silence. Let go. Let the obelisk speak to you. Open your mind, let it in. You will understand. It was then that I noticed the low hum, the pulse, the frequency I had only begun to suspect was real. It was subtle at first, but now that I was close, I could hear it clearly, an inhuman resonance that seemed to vibrate in my chest. I looked around the room, my heart racing. One of the crew members, Clara, her head jerked slightly. Her lips parted, and then, almost imperceptibly, she whispered, I understand now. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I took a step backward, heart pounding, but I didn't leave. I had no more. I had to see it, even if it meant losing my mind like the others. I watched as Fabio's expression grew more intense, his words more forceful. We are becoming more than we were. The obelisk is the key. The signal is clear. We are chosen. You are chosen. A chill ran down my spine. I had to get out. I had to stop this madness before it consumed everyone. I turned to leave, but then I heard it, A voice, a whisper in my ear, like it was coming from the walls themselves. "You will understand soon, Peter. Don't fight it." I froze, the blood draining from my face. The voice wasn't Fabio's. It wasn't anyone I knew. The room fell silent, and the last thing I remember before running out was Fabio's smile, wide and knowing, like he had been waiting for this moment. I didn't understand. Not yet. But I was starting to. I don't know exactly when the first cracks started to appear. Small, at first. A flicker in the corner of my eye. A voice I thought I heard, but dismissed. But now, I see them everywhere. The signs. They're impossible to ignore. It started with a log I found, buried deep in the ship's system. Hidden, encrypted like it wasn't supposed to be seen. I don't know what I expected to find when I decrypted it, but it wasn't what I uncovered. I'm not sure why I even bothered to open it. Maybe because I was desperate for something real, something that made sense. But the moment I opened it, I knew I had made a mistake. The log was from my brother's mission, the one that disappeared without a trace, the one that no one talks about. His name was Eric. He was here on this ship. He was part of the same experiment, the same secret operation that's led me here. Only, he never came back. The message was long, jagged like a broken mirror, the words cut off in strange places. But there was one thing that stood out, clear as day, despite the static that ate away at the recording. His voice, weak, barely audible. "It's in the walls. Peter, it's inside us. Don't listen to it." I stopped the playback, my hand shaking. I didn't want to hear anymore. The last thing I needed was to hear my brother, a dead man, begging for help through a broken transmission. But there was more. The timestamp on the log sent a chill down my spine. Eric was still alive when the signal was sent. He was still alive when everything went to hell on this damn ship. I couldn't sit still anymore. I couldn't ignore the sick feeling that something wasn't right. I started scouring the ship's systems, digging deeper than I should have. Each new file I opened seemed to lead me down a darker path. The closer I got, the clearer the connection between the two missions became, the one my brother had been on and the one I was now on. The same questions, the same errors, the same godforsaken frequency that twisted minds. I couldn't stop thinking about that log, about Eric, about what had happened to him. I had to know. So I went to the medical bay. I knew the others were too distracted by their own spiraling madness to notice. Fabio had been getting more and more erratic, giving cryptic speeches about ascending and unlocking minds like some kind of twisted messiah. He wasn't the man I thought he was. None of them were. I entered the room, and there it was. The body. A body, half covered by a sheet. I should have known something was wrong when I saw it, but I didn't. At first. I thought it was just another of the crew who had broken under pressure, another casualty of this cursed mission. But when I pulled back the sheet, my blood ran cold. It wasn't just anyone's body. It was Eric. His face, pale and twisted, looked like it had been carved out by some unseen hand. The alien metal from the obelisk had fused with his flesh, his skin stretched tight and warped. I couldn't breathe. My stomach churned as I staggered backward. This wasn't possible. This wasn't my brother. My brother had vanished. And this was something else. Something that had taken him. The obelisk had changed him, twisted him into something unrecognizable. But how could he still be alive? How could any of this make sense? I stumbled back, my mind racing. What had Fabio done to them? What was this ascension he kept talking about? What was this thing that the obelisk had turned my brother into? The ship hummed beneath my feet, vibrating with a strange intensity. I could hear a faint sound, something like a whisper, but it wasn't coming from anywhere. It was inside my head. Peter. I froze. My name, whispered in the darkness, as if it were waiting for me. I couldn't tell if I was hearing things or if it was real, but it didn't matter. My heart pounded in my chest. The walls felt like they were closing in. I glanced at the doorway. There was nothing there, just the empty corridor, the cold metal of the ship stretching on forever. But I could feel it. The presence. It was watching me. Something or someone was waiting. I could feel the pressure in the air, thick and suffocating, like the obelisk itself was calling to me. I tried to steady my breath. I couldn't stay here. I had to leave. I had to get away from whatever was happening to this ship before it claimed me too. But then I heard again, closer this time, just behind me. Peter. I spun around, my pulse racing, but there was nothing there, just the cold silence of the ship. The silence I had been forced to learn how to live with. But this time it was different. I wasn't alone anymore. I never had been. I could feel their eyes on me, buried in the static, somewhere between the truth and the lies. And that's when I realized I wasn't going to make it out of here. No one was. We were all already lost. I don't know when I started to distrust Fabio. Maybe it was his smile. Too perfect. Too confident. I watched him as he spoke, holding court in the observation room, the crew hanging on his every word. The way he made it sound so simple. This idea of transcending humanity, of reaching out to something more. He was pulling them in, one by one. I could see it. Some of them even looked relieved. I didn't feel relieved. I felt something else. A cold knot in my stomach. Something was off. And I could see it in the eyes of the others. They weren't themselves anymore. Fabio had his hands clasped, fingers drumming lightly on the surface of the table. His voice, smooth and low, danced through the room like a lullaby, weaving through the static of our malfunctioning calms. "We're here to open the mind, to break through the veil," he said, his eyes burning with an intensity one hadn't noticed before. "What if this is the moment? What if we're about to reach out and touch the architects of existence? The ones who built the obelisk?" The others nodded. They weren't hearing what I was hearing. Or maybe they were, but they didn't understand the danger. I felt a pulse in my head, like something was trying to crawl its way out, a vibration that wasn't quite in my ears, but deeper, like something in the fabric of my mind. A long silence followed. I stared at Fabio, watching his face tighten. Was he expecting something? Was this part of his plan? Then it hit me. The frequency. The low hum that had been buzzing underneath everything for the last few hours. It wasn't just coming from the ship. It was coming from the obelisk. The signal had increased again. It was subtle at first, but now it felt like it was suffocating me. Every fiber of my being screamed to disconnect, to break free of whatever was happening. But Fabio wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. Some of you might already be feeling it. The sensation of slipping, of letting go, he said, eyes gleaming. That's what the obelisk does. It offers the truth. A truth that none of us are ready for. But it is the truth of the architects. I almost choked on my breath. The architects. I had read about them in the logs of the previous missions. They weren't a theory, not a metaphor. They were something else. Something that had no business being real. Fabio's smile widened. He looked like he was talking about something sacred, something ancient, something beyond the understanding of mere mortals. Maybe that's what made it so chilling. The way he believed it. How far he'd already gone. How much he was willing to give up. "We are chosen," he said. His gaze flicked across the room, meeting each of us in turn. "This moment is destiny. But you must choose. Whether to rise with us or fall behind. Are you ready to wake the architects?" A heavy silence blanketed the room. I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. And I could feel something else, too. The quiet thrum of the obelisk's signal, like it was coaxing us forward, making us want to listen, to step closer to it. I felt my fingers twitch, my knuckles going white against the table. This wasn't a choice. This wasn't just about belief or curiosity. This was manipulation. Fabio had orchestrated all of this, using the obelisk like a puppet string. But I wasn't going to be part of his madness. "Fabio," I said, my voice a rasp. "You're wrong. This isn't awakening anyone. You're playing with fire. You don't even know what this is." He looked at me, and for a moment, there was something colder than I expected. His smile faded. His eyes burned brighter, as if he could see into the pit of my soul. "You're scared, Peter," he said softly, his tone filled with a strange mix of pity and triumph. "You've always been scared. You fear what you cannot control. But the obelisk is not something you can control. It is the key to everything. We will open the door, and on the other side, we'll find the architects." I wanted to argue, to shout, to demand he stop this madness. But I couldn't. The words stuck in my throat, choked by the suffocating pull of the frequency that was becoming louder, clearer. It wasn't just in my mind anymore. It was in the room, in the walls, in the air we breathed. The obelisk was speaking, and it wasn't speaking to us. It was speaking through us. "Fabio, stop this." I tried again, my voice shaking. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood, his chair scraping against the floor like nails on a chalkboard. He turned toward the center of the room, where a strange device had been placed. A secondary console, one that hadn't been there before. It was hooked into the ship's systems, connected to the obelisk signal. "We're ready," he murmured. And then he did something that made my heart stop. He pressed a button. The lights flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw something moving behind him. Something huge, dark, and massive, like a shadow cast by a towering figure. My vision blurred, and my ears rang with an unbearable pressure. I was going to fall over. I felt the walls closing in, felt myself being swallowed by something, but I couldn't move, couldn't even blink. The signal was everywhere now. It wasn't just sound, it was thought. It was emotion. It was alive. And then Fabio said something that made my blood run cold. "The architects are waiting. They're already here." I didn't know if he meant it literally, or if it was the frequency warping his mind. But I didn't need to know. I knew we were in too deep, and I had no way out. I don't know when it started, or exactly how it happened, but I know this. Something's gone horribly wrong. I heard the screams first. Soft at first, like someone was just grumbling in their sleep, but then louder, more desperate. The sound of it echoed down the sterile hallways of the caduceus in a way I couldn't shake. Not even the hum of the ship's engines could drown it out. It felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. I should have stayed in the control room, kept monitoring the systems. But something pulled me out there. Maybe it was the dread gnawing at the back of my skull, telling me I was missing something. Maybe I just couldn't ignore the rising tension anymore. Everyone on board was on edge, and I was no exception. I didn't know what I was walking into when I followed the noise. But when I reached the crew quarters, God, the sight that greeted me. It's burned into my mind now, that image. Captain Mason, who'd been quiet for the last few days, eyes always darting around as if he was constantly listening to something no one else could hear, was floating in the hallway. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, his neck bent in a way I didn't think was possible, the skin stretched too tight. The blood, so much blood, dripped from his nose and ears, collecting in thin tendrils that floated like red ribbons in the air. It looked like some kind of grotesque, slow-motion rainfall. He was staring at me. His eyes were wide and glazed, and yet somehow there was a recognition in them. Not just the recognition of seeing a fellow crew member, but something worse, something deeper. Then a sharp, metallic noise came from behind me. I turned to find Lieutenant Garrison standing there, or what was left of him. He was holding a shard of glass, his face streaked with sweat, eyes wild, pupils darting as though he couldn't focus. His hands trembled around the sharp edge, and his uniform was soaked in dark stains. He looked lost, as if he didn't know who he was anymore. It was him, but not him. "Peter." His voice rasped, like it hurt just to speak. He didn't look at me, not really. His eyes kept shifting between the blood floating in the air and the walls around him, as if the ship itself was alive, watching them, watching us. I didn't mean to. His words were slurred, garbled by fear, or something else, something deeper. "What the hell happened?" I asked, taking a slow step forward, not knowing what to expect, not knowing whether to trust what I was seeing. His eyes flicked to me, then back to Mason. His lips curled into a twitching, manic grin, and the next words that came from his mouth sent a cold shiver down my spine. "He asked me to." Garrison's smile widened, almost disconcertingly. "He told me to. I'm helping him." I didn't understand at first. Helping who? What the hell was he talking about? And then, just as I was about to reach for him, there was a loud snap from down the corridor. The sickening sound of bone and muscle tearing free from flesh. Another crew member, Dr. Mitchell, was floating there, her hands desperately gripping her own throat as if she were choking on something invisible. But it wasn't invisible. I saw it then. A thin, black tendril had wrapped around her neck, like an alien vine, squeezing tighter with every breath she took. The obelisk. That damn thing. I'd heard whispers about it, how it twisted minds and bodies in ways we couldn't understand. I didn't believe it at first, but I believed it now. The reality of what was happening, of what we were dealing with, hit me like a physical blow. Fabio's words echoed in my mind. "It will break you. You have to be ready to embrace it." I had to act fast. "Garrison, what the hell are you talking about?" I demanded again, my voice shaky but stern. This isn't you. What did you do?" He didn't respond. His eyes were vacant now, his grip tightening on a shard of glass. And in that instant, I realized he wasn't even looking at me anymore. He was staring at Mason, at his dead body, still suspended in the air, the blood dripping in slow motion. "Help me," Garrison whispered, his voice trailing off into something not quite human. Suddenly, his hand snapped forward like a reflex, and the glass shard was aimed at my chest. My heart pounded as I barely dodged in time, the sharp edge grazing my arm. Pain shot through me, but I didn't have time to focus on it. My mind raced, calculating the quickest way to incapacitate him. I shoved him against the wall hard. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he stared at me with the same vacant eyes, now oddly calm, almost serene, like this was all part of some twisted plan he was following, like he was playing his part in a script written by someone else. And then, as if he was just waiting for the right moment, Garrison let out a low laugh. It wasn't human, not at all. It came from deep inside his chest, a guttural sound that made my blood run cold. The laugh echoed in the small corridor, bouncing off the metal walls, a reminder that we weren't alone anymore. "Not really. You should have come to the light, Peter," he whispered, his voice laced with something dark and ominous. "But you're too late. We all are." That's when I realized we were past the point of no return. The obelisk had infected us all, slowly, insidiously. And now it was taking control. Garrison was no longer a man. He was something else. And as I pushed him away, I knew, deep down, I wasn't going to be able to stop what was coming. Not without sacrificing everything. The blood was still floating, suspended in the air, shimmering like some cruel reminder. I looked back at Mason, his body still twisted in a grotesque, unnatural position, and my stomach turned. The ship was changing. It was all changing. I had to get out of there. I had to find a way to stop this. But I was too late. Too late to save anyone. Too late to save myself. And I couldn't even hear my own voice over the sound of the blood in zero-G. I don't know what's real anymore. I've stopped asking myself. It's easier this way, I suppose. Just to let things slip, let them float by like forgotten memories, like echoes in a vast, empty hall. The ship is changing, or maybe it's just me that's changing. Maybe it's the obelisk messing with my mind again, twisting everything. The walls hum now, constantly. They've started to flicker in and out of focus, like I'm seeing them through water. When I blink, I can't always tell if they're there at all. Today, something happened that made me question if I was still grounded in reality. I was walking down the main corridor, heading toward the medbay to check on the crew. It should have been a normal trip, nothing out of the ordinary. But when I reached the junction near the auxiliary hall, I stopped. The corridor, my corridor, wasn't there. I know how that sounds. It sounds insane, but I swear to you I walked right into it. Or at least I thought I did. There was nothing in front of me but a blank, empty wall. No passage, no familiar lights above me. Nothing. Just this cold, metallic surface, like the ship was locking me out. And I had no way out. I don't know when it started, or exactly how it happened, but I know this. Something's gone horribly wrong. I heard the screams first. Soft at first, like someone was just grumbling in their sleep, but then louder, more desperate. The sound of it echoed down the sterile hallways of the caduceus in a way I couldn't shake. Not even the hum of the ship's engines could drown it out. It felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. I should have stayed in the control room, kept monitoring the systems. But something pulled me out there. Maybe it was the dread gnawing at the back of my skull, telling me I was missing something. Maybe I just couldn't ignore the rising tension anymore. Everyone on board was on edge, and I was no exception. I didn't know what I was walking into when I followed the noise. But when I reached the crew quarters, God, the sight that greeted me. It's burned into my mind now, that image. Captain Mason, who'd been quiet for the last few days, eyes always darting around as if he was constantly listening to something no one else could hear, was floating in the hallway. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, his neck bent in a way I didn't think was possible, the skin stretched too tight. The blood, so much blood, dripped from his nose and ears, collecting in thin tendrils that floated like red ribbons in the air. It looked like some kind of grotesque, slow-motion rainfall. He was staring at me. His eyes were wide and glazed, and yet somehow there was a recognition in them. Not just the recognition of seeing a fellow crew member, but something worse, something deeper. Then, a sharp, metallic noise came from behind me. I turned to find Lieutenant Garrison standing there, or what was left of him. He was holding a shard of glass, his face streaked with sweat, eyes wild, pupils darting as though he couldn't focus. His hands trembled around the sharp edge, and his uniform was soaked in dark stains. He looked lost, as if he didn't know who he was anymore. It was him, but not him. Peter. His voice rasped like a hurt just to speak. He didn't look at me. Not really. His eyes kept shifting between the blood floating in the air and the walls around him, as if the ship itself was alive, watching them. Watching us. I didn't mean to. His words were slurred, garbled by fear, or something else. Something deeper. What the hell happened? I asked, taking a slow step forward, not knowing what to expect, not knowing whether to trust what I was seeing. His eyes flicked to me, then back to Mason. His lips curled into a twitching, manic grin, and the next words that came from his mouth sent a cold shiver down my spine. He asked me to. Garrison's smile widened, almost disconcertingly. He told me to. I'm helping him. I didn't understand at first. Helping who? What the hell was he talking about? And then, just as I was about to reach for him, there was a loud snap from down the corridor. The sickening sound of bone and muscle tearing free from flesh. Another crew member, Dr. Mitchell, was floating there, her hands desperately gripping her own throat as if she were choking on something invisible. But it wasn't invisible. I saw it then. A thin, black tendril had wrapped around her neck, like an alien vine, squeezing tighter with every breath she took. The obelisk. That damn thing. I'd heard whispers about it, how it twisted minds and bodies in ways we couldn't understand. I didn't believe it at first, but I believed it now. The reality of what was happening, of what we were dealing with, hit me like a physical blow. Fabio's words echoed in my mind. It will break you. You have to be ready to embrace it. I had to act fast. Garrison, what the hell are you talking about? I demanded again, my voice shaky but stern. This isn't you. What did you do? He didn't respond. His eyes were vacant now, his grip tightening on the shard of glass. And in that instant, I realized he wasn't even looking at me anymore. He was staring at Mason, at his dead body, still suspended in the air, the blood dripping in slow motion. Help! Me, Garrison whispered, his voice trailing off into something not quite human. Suddenly, his hand snapped forward like a reflex, and the glass shard was aimed at my chest. My heart pounded as I barely dodged in time, the sharp edge grazing my arm. Pain shot through me, but I didn't have time to focus on it. My mind raced, calculating the quickest way to incapacitate him. I shoved him against the wall hard. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he stared at me with the same vacant eyes, now oddly calm, almost serene. Like this was all part of some twisted plan he was following, like he was playing his part in a script written by someone else. And then, as if he was just waiting for the right moment, Garrison let out a low laugh. It wasn't human, not at all. It came from deep inside his chest, a guttural sound that made my blood run cold. The laugh echoed in the small corridor, bouncing off the metal walls, a reminder that we weren't alone anymore. Not really. You should have come to the light, Peter, he whispered, his voice laced with something dark and ominous. But you're too late. We all are. That's when I realized. We were past the point of no return. The obelisk had infected us all, slowly, insidiously. And now, it was taking control. Garrison was no longer a man. He was something else. And, as I pushed him away, I knew, deep down, I wasn't going to be able to stop what was coming. Not without sacrificing everything. The blood was still floating, suspended in the air, shimmering like some cruel reminder. I looked back at Mason, his body still twisted in a grotesque, unnatural position, and my stomach turned. The ship was changing. It was all changing. I had to get out of there. I had to find a way to stop this. But I was too late. Too late to save anyone. Too late to save myself. And I couldn't even hear my own voice over the sound of the blood in zero-G. I don't know what's real anymore. I've stopped asking myself. It's easier this way, I suppose, just to let things slip, let them float by like forgotten memories, like echoes in a vast, empty hall. The ship is changing, or maybe it's just me that's changing. Maybe it's the obelisk messing with my mind again, twisting everything. The walls now, constantly. They've started to flicker in and out of focus, like I'm seeing them through water. When I blink, I can't always tell if they're there at all. Today, something happened that made me question if I was still grounded in reality. I was walking down the main corridor, heading toward the medbay to check on the crew. It should have been a normal trip, nothing out of the ordinary. But when I reached the junction near the auxiliary hall, I stopped. The corridor, my corridor, wasn't there. I know how that sounds. It sounds insane, but I swear to you, I walked right into it. Or at least I thought I did. There was nothing in front of me but a blank, empty wall. No passage, no familiar lights above me. Nothing. Just this cold, metallic surface like the ship was locking me out. I stood there for a long time, staring at it. At first, I thought I'd miscalculated the direction, that I'd lost my bearings in the ship. But then it hit me. This wasn't right. It felt wrong, like the ship itself was shifting and pulling at the edges of the world I knew. It was almost as if the corridor had never existed in the first place. I could have sworn I'd walked down it 100 times before. In fact, I had. But it wasn't here now. I turned around, my heart speeding up, and checked the other direction. It was the same. There was nothing but an empty stretch of metal walls stretching into infinity, an endless, oppressive corridor that seemed to stretch in all directions at once. I tried calling out for someone, anyone, but my voice felt swallowed, like it was fading before it could even leave my mouth. The silence was heavier than usual, thick, like it was pressing against my chest. I walked along the wall, hands trailing over the smooth metal. The air in here was cold. Too cold. Not the temperature of space cold, but something else. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I could feel it seeping into my bones, the same way the obelisk hum gets into your head if you listen long enough. I took a few more steps forward, still hoping for a sign, some kind of clue, anything that could make sense of this. Maybe I was just imagining it. Maybe the stress was starting to break me. Hell, it wouldn't be the first time something snapped inside me. But when I looked up again, the corridor had changed. Or maybe it hadn't. I don't know. It was different. There was a door now. A door I swear was never there before. The handle was gleaming new, and it looked wrong in its perfection. Too smooth, too polished against the harsh industrial design of the ship. It didn't belong. I hesitated. The thing is, when you've been in space long enough, when you've seen enough things that don't make sense, you stop questioning it. You stop asking the obvious. You just accept. But there was something deeply unsettling about that door. Something made my skin crawl, a deep, primal instinct to turn around and walk away. But I didn't. Instead, I reached for the handle. My fingers wrapped around it, cold and slick. And just before I turned it, I heard something. A voice, soft but sharp, like it was calling to me from the other side. Not through the comms. Not over the intercom. Just a voice. Low and melodic, but twisted somehow. It called my name. Peter. I froze. There was no mistaking it. That was my name. But it didn't sound like anyone I knew. It was wrong, distant. 1,000 years old. Peter, it whispered again. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking at all, really. I turned the knob. The door opened with an eerie, grinding sound, like something that hadn't moved in centuries. I stepped into what should have been another part of the ship, but it wasn't. The walls weren't metal anymore. They were soft, flesh-like. Veins pulsated beneath the surface, moving as if alive. The air was thick, heavy, with a sharp, sour odor that made my stomach turn. This wasn't part of the ship. It couldn't be. This was something else. I took a step forward, and that's when I saw it. The dark shape in the distance. It was standing perfectly still, motionless. A figure, barely human, cloaked in shadows. It was tall, impossibly tall. The air seemed to bend around it, warping, distorting. The thing turned its head toward me, slowly. I felt my blood freeze in my veins. Its eyes, those eyes were black, empty, and yet they stared right into me. The voice whispered again, but this time, I didn't understand the words. They were a language I'd never heard, not in any book or recording. It was more like a pulse, a vibration, an understanding that thrummed through my skull. I took a step back, my heart racing, my hands shaking. The door slammed shut behind me, cutting off any escape. The figure moved, slowly. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Everything inside me screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was frozen, caught between fear and a strange pull, an unseen force that kept me rooted in place. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure dissolved into the walls. Gone. Vanished. I stood there, staring at the now empty space, the echo of the voice still ringing in my ears. My legs were shaking, but I had no idea if it was from fear or something else, something deeper. I turned back, almost mechanically, and retraced my steps down the corridor. The walls were cold again, the familiar hum of the ship filling the silence. When I reached the junction, I stopped. The corridor was back, just as it had been. No door, no flesh, nothing but metal. I don't know if I've lost my mind or if the ship itself is changing. Maybe it's both. But the worst part, I can still hear the voice, faintly, calling my name from somewhere deep inside the ship. Peter. And I don't know if it's me who's calling it back, or if something else is. The air inside the caduceus felt wrong. Thin, almost suffocating. My heart was pounding in my chest, each beat sounding louder than the hum of the engines. I could feel the walls closing in, not physically, but something much worse, a pressure in my mind that I couldn't shake. My footsteps echoed through the hallway, louder than they should have been. I'd always hated how quiet space is, how the silence crawls into your bones, but now it was worse. Now, silence felt like a threat. I had been walking for what felt like hours, but I knew it hadn't been that long. I had to find Fabio. I had to stop him before it was too late. The hallway I was in stretched out before me, twisting at odd angles, as if the ship itself was trying to keep me away from the core. The layout didn't make sense. The walls seemed to shift as I walked, the doors in the wrong places. My mind was starting to play tricks on me, again. That damned frequency. It was in my head, burrowing itself deep, like a parasite I couldn't shake off. I reached the elevator shaft at the end of the hall. The lift doors were open, waiting for me like some kind of invitation to the unknown. I didn't hesitate. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the core. The doors slid shut behind me, sealing me in. The ride down was agonizingly slow. Each floor I passed felt like a step further away from sanity. The lights flickered as I descended, casting harsh shadows that made the walls seem to bend and pulse. I rubbed my eyes, but it didn't help. The world around me was distorting, unraveling, like the very fabric of reality was being stretched too thin. When the elevator finally stopped, the doors opened to a vast chamber. The room was bathed in an eerie, bluish glow, the source of which I couldn't identify. The walls were covered in strange, organic patterns, alien, yet familiar in some sickening way. I could hear a low hum vibrating through my bones, the same hum that had been echoing through the ship for days now. It was the sound of the obelisk, pulling us in, urging us closer. I stepped into the chamber, my breath shallow, my body tense. Fabio was standing at the center, surrounded by several of the crew who had followed him, those who had already succumbed to whatever twisted vision he'd planted in their minds. They stood still, their eyes closed, faces blank. They looked like statues. It was like they were waiting for something, waiting for the next command, the next phase in this grotesque ritual. Fabio turned slowly when he saw me, a small smile creeping across his face. His eyes were too bright, too wide. There was a madness in them that wasn't there before, something ancient and hungry. "Peter," he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper, but somehow it felt like it was everywhere, vibrating through my bones. "You've finally come. It's time." "Time for what?" I asked, my voice hoarse. My throat was dry, like I hadn't spoken in years. "What the hell is going on here, Fabio? This isn't you. This isn't real." His smile widened. "It is real, Peter. It's all real. Can't you feel it? The signal. It's calling us. Calling me. Calling you. We're on the verge of something magnificent." I shook my head, desperate to hold on to some shred of sanity. "This is insane. You're insane." He stepped forward, and the others followed him in perfect unison, their eyes still closed. "No, Peter. You just don't understand yet. But you will. You'll see. The obelisk isn't just a machine. It's a message. A door. And through it, we can become more than human. We can ascend. The architects are waiting for us." "Ascend," I whispered, backing away, my mind racing. My fingers brushed against the cold, smooth surface of the wall. I could feel something crawling beneath the metal, something alive. "Fabio, please stop." He didn't listen. Of course, he didn't listen. He was too far gone. He reached out and placed his hand on the center of the obelisk, and that's when everything changed. The room shuddered, as if the ship itself was alive, groaning under the pressure. The hum grew louder, more intense, vibrating through my skull. My vision blurred, and I stumbled, falling to my knees. The wall seemed to close in, and the floor tilted beneath me. And then I saw it. The obelisk wasn't just a structure. It wasn't just metal or stone. It was something alive. I could see it now, its shifting patterns, the way it seemed to pulse and breathe, feeding off the energy of the crew, feeding off their minds. It was like a parasite, a leech, drawing us all in, swallowing us whole. Peter, Fabio's voice came again, distorted, stretched. You have to let go. You have to let it in. You can't fight it. You're already here. You're already one of us. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But my body wouldn't move. The air was thick, too thick to breathe. My vision was clouding over, the edges of reality crumbling away. I could feel my mind slipping, twisting into something else, something alien. And then, just as I thought I would lose myself completely, I saw something, someone. It was my brother. His face, pale and distorted, was floating in front of me. His eyes were wide open, but they weren't his eyes anymore. They were dark, empty, filled with that same void I saw in Fabio's gaze. He reached out a hand, his lips moving in silent words. I couldn't hear him. I couldn't understand him. But I knew one thing. It was too late. I can feel it now, deep in my skull, a pulse that presses against the soft tissue of my mind. The obelisk isn't just in my head anymore. It's inside me, crawling through my veins, searching for something. I've seen it before, in fleeting glimpses, an image too sharp, too real to be a hallucination, but too terrible to be true. My brother's face, the one I thought was dead, the one I buried with my own hands after the last mission. His face is there, in the shadows, when I close my eyes. The whispers don't stop. They never stop. I should have known better than to let my guard down. I shouldn't have believed that the dampeners were enough, that I could block out the hum, the rhythm of the obelisk signal. But I was wrong. I'm always wrong when it comes to this damn place. I thought I could outlast it, outthink it, but it's inescapable. The ship is warping. I don't mean that in some metaphorical sense. I mean it literally. Space isn't bending around us. It's collapsing. Hallways stretch into themselves. Walls fold in on corners that weren't there before. I've walked in circles for hours, only to find myself standing in the same place I started, as if the ship is mocking me, reminding me that it's no longer just a ship. It's a prison, a labyrinth made of metal and shadows. I've lost track of time. The monitors in the control room flicker and stutter. The numbers on the clock are blinking like some glitch in the system. But I don't need to look at the clock anymore. I know it's not real. Time's a game here. The ship plays with it like a toy, and I'm just a passenger in its twisted game. But it's not the ship that frightens me now. It's the thing that's watching me. I've seen it, or something like it, in the reflective surface of the metal panels, in the smudge on the windows. I catch a glimpse of movement, but when I look, there's nothing there. Nothing but the emptiness of space staring back at me. I wish I could scream. I wish I could wake up, but I can't. There's no waking from this. Fabio, damn him, he's too far gone. His obsession with the obelisk has blinded him. He's already lost, his mind twisted into something unrecognizable. He's been waiting for this moment, the moment where we all fall, where we all surrender ourselves to whatever's out there, to whatever it is that's calling to us. And I can't let him. I won't let him. I make my way to the core chamber, my footsteps slow, deliberate, as if the air around me is thickening, slowing my movements. I know what I have to do, but the closer I get, the harder it is to think. The walls seem to pulse with a rhythmic hum, as if they're alive, breathing. I feel the pulse in my own chest, matching the beat of my heart. It's so loud now, it drowns out everything else. When I reach the chamber door, it's different. It's not just metal anymore. It's something else. Something organic. I can feel the cold sweat on my skin, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up as if they sense something I don't. The door hisses as it opens, revealing the chamber within. I step inside, and for a moment I can't breathe. The room feels wrong. The walls are covered in strange, glistening veins of black and gold. The obelisk is standing there, waiting, its jagged form looming in the center, as though it's alive. I can hear it now, clearer than ever. The low hum, the vibrations that travel up my spine and into my skull, digging deeper with each passing second. And then I see him. Fabio. He's standing before the obelisk, arms outstretched, his face bathed in an unnatural light. He's not looking at me. He's looking at the obelisk, like it's the only thing that matters. Like it's the only thing that's real. Peter, he says, his voice soft, almost a whisper. You don't understand. It's not just a machine. It's a doorway. It's a bridge to something greater than us. Something we can't even begin to comprehend. His eyes are wide, unblinking, too still. I see in them now something other. His pupils are dilated, his gaze fixed on the obelisk like it's the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. Fabio. I shout, but my voice sounds hollow, distant. This isn't real. None of this is real. You're killing us all. Don't you see that? He turns to me, a slow, deliberate movement, and for a moment, I think I see a flicker of recognition in his eyes. But then it's gone, replaced by something darker, something colder. He smiles, but it's not a smile I recognize. It's a smile that sends a chill straight through my bones. You're afraid, Peter, he says, his voice almost soothing. You're afraid of what you don't understand. But it's already too late. The obelisk has already chosen us. Chosen me. I take a step forward, but the floor seems to shift beneath my feet. The air is thick now, heavy, pressing against me like it's trying to crush me. I can't breathe. I can't think. My head is spinning so fast I can't catch up. I hear his voice again, but it's not Fabio's voice anymore. It's something else. Something ancient. Join us, Peter. It whispers, and the words feel like they're inside my mind, crawling through my thoughts, like worms burrowing into my skin. And then I see him, my brother. His face but twisted, his body, writhing, caught between two realities. I stumble back, my heart racing in my chest. No, you're dead. You're not real. I scream, but he doesn't answer. He just smiles, his eyes empty, and then he's gone. It's too much. I can't take it anymore. The walls are closing in. The obelisk is pulsing, its hum vibrating through every bone in my body. I can feel it, whatever it is, growing stronger, feeding off my fear, my confusion. I reach for the emergency switch, the one that will trigger the core meltdown. I have to stop this. I have to destroy it all. As my hand closes around the switch, I hear Fabio's voice one last time, soft, almost pleading. Don't. Please. Don't. But I don't listen. I flip the switch. The explosion tears through the ship, and for a brief moment, everything goes silent. And then, nothing. I never thought I'd be the one to say this. I thought, if I was lucky, I'd be a part of the mission's records, just another name in a long list of dead astronauts who never came back. But here I am. The ship is falling apart. I can hear it, the creaking of the hull, the deep groan in the walls, the shifting of metal I'm sure was never meant to move that way. Time is stretched. It's 48 hours since I triggered the countdown, but it feels like weeks. I can't trust my own body anymore. My hands shake like I'm holding onto a ghost, and my head is full of things that don't belong there. Faces, voices, images. Every time I close my eyes, I see the obelisk. I can feel it breathing beneath the skin of this ship, inside the circuits, deep in the foundations of this dying vessel. Fabio is gone. Or at least, the Fabio I knew is gone. What's left is something different. His eyes are different now. I can see him in the observation deck, staring at the stars, but I know he's not seeing the stars. He's seeing something else. Something he refuses to speak about, but I know it's there. I know because I see it too. The others, they've stopped talking. At least, the ones who haven't lost their minds completely. They wander the halls like ghosts, muttering to themselves or standing in corners, staring at nothing. The ship is full of ghosts now, and I'm one of them. I'm writing this, recording this message because I have to. I can't leave this for someone else to find. I don't know how long it's been since the last crew member spoke, or the last time someone acknowledged the reality around them. But I need someone to hear this. Maybe you're out there. Maybe this message will get to you. If it does, don't come. Please don't come. You don't know what we found. What we woke up. The obelisk. It's not just an alien structure. It's alive in a way I can't explain. It's not made of rock or metal. It's made of thoughts, of time, of minds. It feeds on us, on our fear, our confusion. It distorts everything, warps it into shapes we can't understand. I think that's what it does. It pulls us into it, like a black hole pulling light, until there's nothing left but fragments. Pieces of our sanity. Pieces of us. I see my brother sometimes, walking down the hall. I saw him yesterday, standing in the med bay. I tried to speak to him, but when I reached out, he vanished. Like smoke in the wind. But I know it wasn't really him. It couldn't have been. I saw him die, heard his scream echo in the dark. This isn't him. I don't know what it is, but it's not him. It's never going to be him again. Fabio. He doesn't even care anymore. He's given himself completely to the obelisk. He says it's the next step for humanity, that we're the chosen ones, the ones meant to ascend. His words don't even make sense now. I've stopped trying to understand him, but I can hear his voice sometimes through the walls. It's as if he's speaking in my head. He's close, so close. He's trying to pull me in, but I won't let him. I won't. I've already felt it, you know? That cold hand on my shoulder, the tug at the edge of my mind, the whisper in the dark. It's here. It's always been here, waiting for me to listen. But I can't. I won't. If this message reaches you, I need you to hear me. The obelisk, it's not just a relic. It's a trap. A trap that doesn't just trap your body, it traps your mind. It rewrites you. It rewrites everything. The truth is worse than you can imagine. I thought I'd be able to stop it. I thought I could shut it down, destroy it, or at least get us all out of here. But I've failed. It's too late for that. The countdown is almost finished. I'm here alone in the core room, and I can already hear the hum growing louder. The countdown is ticking down, and I can feel the walls closing in. I've activated the failsafe. The ship's going to explode, but I don't think it will matter. Maybe it'll just pull the rest of us into the void. Maybe it'll call to someone else, someone like you. So, this is my final transmission. It's not much. It's all I can do now. I'm sorry. I failed. We all failed. But if you hear this, if you're out there, please, I beg you, don't listen to the obelisk. Don't look at it. Don't think about it. Because once you do, it's over. It's already over. Goodbye. Peter Halvorsen. Mission log 4635. End transmission. I don't know how long it's been since they found me. Time gets blurry in places like this. It could have been days, weeks, or maybe even years. They don't tell you how long a place like that can stretch out the seconds, the hours, the days. It's all the same, really endless. I remember sitting there in the cold, steel room, watching the screen flicker on. The hum of the machine filled the quiet, its flickering light bouncing off the faces of the people in front of it. They looked ordinary enough, uniformed, the standard issue salvage crew. There were 5 of them, 2 men, 3 women. Their eyes were wide, glued to the small screen in front of them. A tiny red light blinked, marking the beginning of the transmission. The first words were muffled, distorted by the static. It wasn't the usual kind of static, though. It was deeper, the kind you feel in your bones before it reaches your ears. That's when I knew. They pressed a button to clear it. The audio cut through, but only for a second. Personal log, 1709. My name is Peter Halvorsen. It was me. It was my voice. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but it wasn't. I could hear it. The tremor, the weariness, the unmistakable dread. My words from that final moment, my last plea, falling out of that cold, dark void I'd left behind. I don't know how much time I have. The ship, it's changing. The obelisk, it's not what we thought. It's not just. The screen blinked again, a small glitch running through it, and then I cut off. Just like that, as if I'd been snatched away. The air in the room thickened. One of the women, her fingers trembling, leaned closer to the screen, staring like she might find something hidden in the blackness. She didn't know what she was looking at, but they all did the same thing. Lean in, try to understand the impossible. The next part of the transmission flickered back on, but it was distorted. The words scrambled into something unrecognizable. But beneath it, beneath all the white noise, there was something else. A low bass hum, like it wasn't even coming from the speakers. It was coming from somewhere deeper, somewhere closer. It shook the walls, the ground beneath them. Something they couldn't explain. Warning. Don't look. The voice was mine again, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't just the fear anymore. It was something worse. Like I was on the edge of saying something I wasn't supposed to, something that couldn't be heard, and that I didn't want to be heard. A warning to them, or to anyone who might be listening. To whoever was left out there. Don't listen to it. Don't look at it. Don't think about it. The room was dead silent. The screen showed a perfect freeze frame of my face, a mix of panic and something else, something alive in the corners of my eyes. I couldn't place it, but I knew what it meant. I'd seen it, felt it, the thing behind the signal. Then the screen cut out. The machine made a sharp, mechanical whine, like it was rejecting something it couldn't process. A click, a burst of static. Then the screen went black, and for a second, there was nothing. Complete, eerie silence. But not for long. The red light on the console blinked again. Another transmission. Another part of the message. Playback error. One of the crew muttered, pressing buttons as if it could fix it. But there was nothing to fix. They were hearing it. They didn't know they were hearing it. They weren't supposed to hear it. Then, the low hum started again. It was so subtle at first, barely perceptible. But the closer the woman sat to the screen, the clearer it became. The hum was in her bones now, too. I could see it in her eyes, the same thing I'd seen in mine before the end. That slow shift. Something moved behind the screen. The shadows were wrong. I could feel it, a presence that didn't belong. Not in this room. Not in this place. One of the men, tall and broad-shouldered, cursed and turned to walk away, but his steps were heavy, slower than they should have been. He wasn't looking at the screen, but he could feel it. They all could. That hum, that vibration that crawled deeper, pulling their minds apart one cell at a time. The woman closest to the screen, though, she didn't move. She tilted her head, just slightly, like she could hear something beyond the hum. Then she smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It wasn't even human. It was just a flicker, something wrong in her expression. And when she whispered, her voice was soft, almost soothing, as if she were speaking to herself. It's beautiful. No one else heard it. Not first. They were too busy fumbling with the tech, too busy pretending that there was still some shred of control. But the hum grew louder, pulsing in sync with their breathing, with the beating of their hearts. I knew what they had found. I knew what they had heard. The obelisk had done it again. It had claimed another set of ears, another set of eyes. It was waiting, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Not anymore. I felt the familiar grip of terror wrap around my chest. But this time it wasn't my fear. It was theirs. And the hum, it only grew louder.